We are extremely pleased to continue our extended story on Thumb Wind's End of the Road in Michigan podcast. In 1831, two 26-year-old French aristocrats, Alexis de Tocqueville and Gustave de Beaumont, decided to strike out, in what today's terms, would be the ultimate road trip. Namely, traveling overland from Detroit, to the last white settlement in the Northwest Territories, to Saginaw, Michigan. This is the second part of our series. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's tale from the end of the road. Part 2, A Fortnight in the Wilderness. Written on board the steamboat Superior, August of 1831. The journey to Detroit. On the 19th of July, at 10 a.m. we embarked on the Ohio steamboat, steering towards Detroit. A strong breeze blew from the northeast, and gave to the waters of Lake Erie the appearance of ocean waves. On the right stretched a boundless horizon. On the left we hugged the southern shores of the lake, and sometimes ran so near as to be within earshot. These shores are flat, and unlike those of all the European lakes that I have seen. Nor do they resemble the shores of the sea. Immense forests overshadow them, and surround the lake with a thick belt rarely broken. Yet sometimes the aspect of the country changes altogether. At the end of a wood rises an elegant spire, among white houses exquisitely clean, and shops. 2 steps further the primitive, apparently impervious, forest reasserts its empire, and again throws its shadow on the lake. Those who have traveled in the United States will find in this a picture of American society. All is abrupt and unforeseen. Extreme civilization and unassisted nature are side by side in a manner scarcely to be imagined in France. Like everyone else, travelers have their illusions. I had seen in Europe that the more or less retirement of a province or of a town, its wealth or its poverty, and its greater or less extent, exercised an immense influence over the ideas, the manners, the whole civilization of its inhabitants, and often made a difference of many centuries between portions of a single country. I had thought that this rule would apply, and in an even wider sense, to the New World, and that a country peopled gradually and imperfectly, must present every condition of existence, must exhibit society in all its stages, and, as it were, of every different age. I supposed America to be the country in which every phase which the social scale makes man undergo could be studied, and in which might be seen all the links of a huge chain, reaching from the opulent patrician of the town, to the savage of the wilderness. There, in short, within a few degrees of longitude, I expected to find, as in a frame, the whole story of the human race. There is no truth in this picture. Of all countries, America is the least fitted to present the scenes that I sought. In America, more even than in Europe, there is but one society, whether rich or poor, high or low, commercial or agricultural. It is everywhere composed of the same elements. It has all been raised or reduced to the same level of civilization. The man whom you left in the streets of New York you find again in the solitude of the far West, the same dress, the same tone of mind, the same language, the same habits, the same amusements. No rustic simplicity, nothing characteristic of the wilderness, nothing even like our villages. This peculiarity may be easily explained. The portions of territory first and most fully peopled have reached a high degree of civilization. Education has been prodigally bestowed, the spirit of equality has tinged with singular uniformity the domestic habits. Now, it is remarkable that the men thus educated are those who every year migrate to the wilderness. In Europe, a man lives and dies where he was born. In America, you do not see the representatives of a race grown and multiplied in retirement, having long lived unknown to the world, and left to its own efforts. The inhabitants of an isolated region arrived yesterday, bringing with them the habits, ideas, and wants of civilization. They adopt only so much of savage life as is absolutely forced upon them, hence you see the strangest contrasts. You step from the wilderness into the streets of a city, from the wildest scenes to the most smiling pictures of civilized life. If night does not surprise you and force you to sleep under a tree, you may reach a village where you will find everything, even French fashions, and caricatures from Paris. The shops of Buffalo or Detroit are as well supplied with all these things as those of New York. The looms of lions work for both alike. You leave the high road, you plunge into paths scarcely marked out, you come at length upon a plowed field, a hut built of rough logs, lighted by a single narrow window. You think that you have at last reached the abode of an American peasant. You are wrong. You enter this hut, which looks the abode of misery. The master is dressed as you are, his language is that of the towns. On his rude table are books and 2 newspapers. He takes you hurriedly aside to be informed of what is going on in Europe, and asks you what has most struck you in his country. He will trace on paper for you the plan of a campaign in Belgium, and will teach you gravely what remains to be done for the prosperity of France. You might take him for a rich proprietor, come to spend a few nights in a shooting box. And, in fact, the log hut is only a halting place for the American, a temporary submission to necessity. As soon as the surrounding fields are thoroughly cultivated, and their owner has time to occupy himself with superfluities, a more spacious and suitable dwelling will succeed the log hut, and become the home of a large family of children, who, in their turn, will someday build themselves a dwelling in the wilderness. To return to our journey. All day we steamed slowly in sight of the coast of Pennsylvania, and afterwards of that of Ohio. We stopped for a minute at Presque Isle, now called Erie. In the evening, the weather had become fair. We quickly crossed the middle of the lake towards Detroit. On the following morning, we sighted the little island called Middle Sister, near to which Commodore Perry gained, in 1814, a celebrated naval victory over the English. Soon after, the flat shores of Canada seemed to approach rapidly, and we saw opening before us the channel of Detroit, and in the distance the walls of Fort Malden. Founded by the French, this town still bears numerous marks of its origin. The houses are the French were then creating the Kingdom of Belgium. Built and situated like those of a French village, and in the center rises a Catholic spire, surmounted by a cock. It might be a hamlet near Caen or Evreux. Whilst we were contemplating, not without emotion, its resemblance to France, a strange object attracted us. On the beach at our right was a Highlander on guard, in full uniform. He wore the dress that Waterloo has made famous, the plumed bonnet, the kilt, all was there, his arms and accoutrements glittered in the sun. On our left, as a contrast, two naked Indians, with painted bodies, and rings in their noses, appeared at the same instant on the opposite bank. They embarked in a little canoe, with a blanket for a sail, committing themselves to the wind and the current. They shot in this frail vessel towards our ship, sailed rapidly round us, and then proceeded quietly to fish before the British soldier, who, still standing motionless in his shining uniform, seemed to represent the gorgeous civilization and the military force of Europe. We reached Detroit at 3 o'clock. It is a little town of between 2,000 and 3,000 inhabitants, founded by the Jesuits in the midst of the forest, in 1710, and still containing many French families. We had crossed the state of New York, and steamed 400 miles on Lake Erie. We now were on the frontier of civilization. Still we did not know what course to take. Information was not obtained so easily as might have been expected. To cross almost impenetrable forests, to swim deep rivers, to encounter pestilential marshes, to sleep exposed to the damp air of the woods, these are efforts which an American easily conceives. If $1 is to be gained by them, that is the point. But that a man should take such journeys from curiosity, he cannot understand. Besides, dwelling in a wilderness, he prizes only man's work. He sends you to visit a road, a bridge, a pretty village, but that you should admire large trees, or wild scenery, is to him incomprehensible. We could make no one understand us. You want to see forests, said our hosts to us with a smile, go straight on, you will find them to your heart's content. There are fortunately in this neighborhood new roads and well-cleared paths. As for Indians, you will see more than enough of them in our squares and our streets. You need not go far for that. Those whom you see amongst us are beginning at any rate to be civilized. They look less savage. We soon felt that it would be impossible to obtain the truth from them in a straightforward manner, and that we must maneuver. We therefore went to the United States agent for the sale of wild land, of which there is much in the district of Michigan. We presented ourselves to him as persons who, without having quite made up our minds to establish ourselves in the country, were interested to know the price and situation of the government lands. Major Biddle, the officer, now understood perfectly what we wanted, and entered into a number of details, to which we eagerly listened. This part, he said, showing us on the map the river of St. Joseph, which, after many windings, discharges itself into Lake Michigan, it seems to me to be the best suited to your purpose. The land is good, and large villages are already founded there. The road is so well kept up that public conveyance runs every day. Well, we said to ourselves, now we know where not to go, unless we intend to travel post over the wilderness. We thanked Major Biddle for his advice, and asked him, with an air of indifference bordering on contempt, towards which side of the district the current of emigration had, up to the present time, least tended. This way, he said, without attaching more importance to his answer than we had seemed to do to our question, towards the northwest. About Pontiac and its neighborhood, some pretty fair establishments have lately been commenced. But you must not think of fixing yourselves farther off. The country is covered by an almost impenetrable forest, which extends uninterruptedly towards the northwest, full of nothing but wild beasts and Indians. The United States proposed to open a way through it immediately, but the road has only just begun and stops at Pontiac. I repeat, that there is nothing to be thought of in that quarter. We again thanked Major Biddle for his good advice, and determined to take it in a contrary sense. We were beside ourselves with joy at the prospect of at length finding a place which the torrent of European civilization had not yet invaded. This concludes this week's special edition story. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Thumbwind's End of the Road podcast. If you like this kind of story, you are invited to join other monthly visitors on our website at thumbwind.com. Please watch for and download next week's continuation of Alexis de Tocqueville's Saginaw Trail story next Sunday evening. Please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and give us a review. From the end of the road in Michigan. Have a great day.